Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ubuntu Touch Q&A, the UBports Foundation show discussing the development of Ubuntu Touch and our community's questions. This is episode 50, Big 5-0, everyone. We made it. Streamed live on May 18th, 2019. My name is Dalton, and for this episode, we're going to be playing a little bit with the format, maybe shortening up a little bit. Oh, and also I fired all of my co-hosts because that's what you do when you reach 50 episodes, right? Right. You fire all your co-hosts. So we're going to play with the format a little bit. We're going to play with a little bit more viewer interaction here. So everyone who's in live chat, I am reading you, and I always read you, but I'm going to read you more this time. And we've got a great roundup of questions from the forum and news from the community for the past 2 weeks. Let's get right into it, shall we? So first up on the news this week, we've got the Ubuntu Touch OTA 9 release. This is huge. And in a way, it's huge because it's small. Ubuntu Touch OTA 9 brings a bunch of new features, including a refreshed look for our icon set, thank you, Michelle. Fixes to the Nexus 5's camera, so now you can actually take pictures right. And the cute quick controls too, Suru style. All of that can be found at our blog post. Linky link. It was released last week, Wednesday. Hello Daniel, Fuse Team, Mr. Okie P. How are you all today? It's a good day. If you want Ubuntu Touch OTA 9 on your phone and you haven't had it yet, I don't know what you're doing because it's been out for a week. You can go to the updates page of your Ubuntu Touch device by going to System Settings and clicking on Updates. As long as you don't have any app updates available, it'll start downloading automatically, and you'll be able to use your shiny new OTA 9. If you don't yet have Ubuntu Touch on your device, you can head over to devices.ubports or devices.ubuntu-touch.io to see if your device is supported, get the installer, and get that for you. Is Dalton home alone today? Yes, everyone left me. So I'm going to, how does it go? The house is going to get robbed, and I'm going to brutally maim the people who tried to rob it. That's what we do here. Let's talk about some new exciting apps in the Open Store. This week, we have Lionel, who is just on an absolute roll releasing already built cute apps into the store. So we have Stellarium Mobile, which is a mobile port of the Stellarium application that all of you know and love that shows you stars in the night sky. It's not night here, so, you know, it's showing me things. And it also has all the features you'd expect, like showing you where constellations are in the sky, where different stars are that might be interesting to you. The only thing that is missing still is getting the sensor support to work, so it shows where you're pointing in the sky. That is a feature of the Android app. It is not yet available here, but this is a great first step, and I love Stellarium, so I love having it on my device. Lionel again, back at it again. That's a dead meme. With the Drum Kit app as well. This is... Now, I remember way back when the iPod Touch first came out, and everyone had the Drum Kit app, right? So, right? Everyone had this app. I don't know what was up with it, but everyone loved this app and annoyed their friends with it. Or maybe that was just my friends. You can also grab that in the Open Store. You can lay down some sick beats, record your tracks. I am not going to do that for you because my sense of rhythm apparently has completely died in the past 2 years. But, you know, I'm not going to go on about that. We've also seen updates to Podbird, so it now shows older episodes in the most recent episodes downloaded list. which I think was a needed addition and I love using. And we have updates to the core apps for translations and fixes to the dark themes. All of that for the core apps can be found on the forum. Brian has put together an awesome little post all about. That's not what I wanted to copy and paste. There we go. Brian puts together the core app updates every so often to keep everyone up to date on what's going on with the core apps team. If you'd like to get any of those apps, you can head over to the Open Store. Stellarium Mobile, DrumKit, and Podbird are available for your free downloading pleasure at any time. That's the roundup of the news this week. We are getting right through it. I like this so far. I like this format so far. I'm going to keep going. Hello, Friedel. Hello, Golden Seti, Jay Wood, all of you people. So I'm going to take a quick minute and thank our sponsors. Thank you to everyone who's keeping UBports going, allowing us to release great software and help our core apps team do what they do, which is make awesome apps. I'd like especially to thank our community sponsors on Patreon, Darko Balka, Thorath Son, Lauren Gentiliman, and Morgan McMillan. You guys are awesome. Keep up the good work. And I'd like to thank our business sponsors, including DigitalOcean, Packet.net, Private Internet Access, and Smooze for keeping our infrastructure going and making sure that we can create great software as well. If you'd like to join any of those, you can head over to patreon.com/UBports or librapay.com/UBports. Or you can find a few other links at ubports.com/donate. That is my spiel. We're going to go straight into the questions. We take these questions from our forum before every episode, so we can get some question answering goodness getting going done. Yeah, we're going with that. Dom UBPKM leads us off this week with, do you now have an operational bank account so as to help you directly when we want without intermediaries? Well, this is in reference to the recent approval of the UBports Foundation for Operation by the German government. We have been approved with minor changes to our statutes and some other admin things that need to be done yet to operate as a Stiftung. We do not yet have an operational bank account, no. And we are still working on the final. After you get approved, apparently there's more paperwork. And so we're getting that all done now. I have an update from. Here we are. Ewald, who you would have met in Q&A 45, I believe. You can go back to that episode if you want to hear more about the UBports Foundation. Who says, I had hopefully our last discussion with the Berlin government to finalize these documents. His expectation is the end of June, about a 1-month delay from the conversation. So we should be seeing more information about the UBports Foundation and actually be able to create a bank account after that. I know this feels like a bit of moving the stick, moving the goalposts, but that's just how we have to operate with government entities trying to get this legal entity off the ground, become a nonprofit. And we're going to keep doing it because we think that this is important for the future of Ubuntu Touch. Speaking of Ewald, this weekend he should be, I believe he would have arrived not long ago at the Vala event. This is an event put on by, I forget how to call them. They're looking at creating a system based on Ubuntu Touch or Sailfish or Nemo Mobile. And they want to take the design of the system and modify it to their own needs And of course, with GPL software, that is exactly what they can do. eWallet is there for some uh, business, looking more into the business side of things than the development side of things. And we would have loved to send Jan, voluntolding him, as it were, to go to the event. Unfortunately, this weekend he's sick. So no, I didn't fire him. He is just not not feeling well. If we had him on, he would currently not be able to talk to us because he's in good shape. And Dom's next question was, as you are now a foundation with a legal structure, can you get public aids in addition to these private donations? Yes, we should be able to apply for public grant funding as that comes up and as it's needed. He also had another question about full-time development work. We do currently have 2 full-time developers, myself and Marius. I can tell you that we are being paid below market rate, but we are working full-time on UBports, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Twayayor had some questions regarding some upcoming projects and hardware coming up. So his first question was, what is the expected performance of the PinePhone? Now, the PinePhone is an upcoming software hardware project by Pine64, the makers of the Pine64 dev board, the Pine Book, and other such single board computers and single board computer products. And the PinePhone is going to be their device containing the Allwinner A64. It is a phone. Here we are. That's it. That's the development kit, at least. It'll come with 2 gigabytes of RAM, LTE modem, Wi-Fi, everything that you expect on a phone. You can find more information about that on our forum. There's a large PinePhone topic that you can search for there to get all of the juicy details of it. Expected performance of it. The A64 has the same GPU that can be found in our BQ E4.5, which was, yes, the first phone that shipped with Ubuntu Touch out of the box. It had a little bit lower resolution screen compared to the PinePhone will. PinePhone is expected to be at 1440 by 720 resolution, whereas the BQ E4.5 was 1920 by 720. 1280 by 720, 720p. So it'll be pushing a few more pixels out of that same GPU. So we'll be seeing about similar performance between the two devices. Another thing to note is we may be using the open source Lima driver on this A64, which would be a little bit slower expected, but will improve with time than the driver that we have on the E4.5. We're also exploring using the Mali driver, however, which would let us drive the full performance of the chip. Both of which are approaches that we are looking into using. Both should work with middling success, and we'll keep going with that as we get closer to the release date. Your second question has to do with bug bounties. I know it's been hashed out on Telegram multiple times, so I'm not actually curious about this myself. But I see people both there and on the forum repeatedly proposing various forms of bug bounties. Perhaps a few words in the Q&A about the project leader's feeling about that subject would be appropriate. Now, he's right, there have been many discussions about this before, so let's talk a little bit about that. Now, bug bounties are programs created by open source communities to fund development by having people crowdfund a certain issue or feature that they want to get fixed or implemented. And once someone fixes that issue or implements that feature, they get rewarded the bounty. So the people making fixes are called bug hunters, and the people putting up the bounties are called bounties. bountiers. I don't actually know what they're called. This is an interesting program that has been around for a while. Bounty Source was the famous one to first do it. But we haven't really seen the model take off in any way. For one, apparently it's impossible to claim your team on Bounty Source. The community has created a team for UBports, and both Marius and myself have tried to claim it, but we never get an answer. So I don't know what's going on there. That would allow us to administrate the team, allow us to collect the SALT donations, which are monthly recurring donations, as well as seed using the name of the project. But I guess we can't do that. Another problem is Bounty Source itself charges 10% of your cash outs. So it's not exactly as good as us directly financing developers. And the third problem is kind of that there are people problems with the whole model. Famously, people seem to think that once a bounty it gets to a high enough number, someone will automatically want to fix it and will once a bounty gets over, sometimes it's as little as $50, people will be upset that the issue hasn't been fixed within weeks of that becoming a thing. But the problem is those people might not know internally that bug is actually a interaction between 4 different components, and a small re-architecture of the entire system is required to make them work right. And that is a little bit more than the bounty's price of worth of work. So that whole model is just kind of a dead end as far as I can see. It's useful to finance small tasks or help people who are already interested in doing something take that final leap to do it. But we found more success in asking people to set their own price and then funding that directly from UBports than we have with these public sites. And we have done that before, but we don't publicize that information, both for tax reasons, our previous tax situation, and for the people who we're financing's privacy. That's why you haven't seen any news on that before. But we do finance developers directly. We take the Ubuntu Mate model, as it were, if you've heard of that. And they're also seeing a similar situation where, because of the GDPR and other similar privacy laws, they can't publicly post who they're financing anymore. And we don't want to do that either. We especially don't want to fall in disfavor of the GDPR. So that's my spiel on bug bounties. Diogo had a couple of questions this week. First off, is support for WireGuard currently planned? Now, WireGuard is an interesting new VPN technology that is super fast, secure, and inside of the Linux kernel, which makes it even faster and gives it access to all of the cryptographic primitives included with Linux. Did I mention that it's fast and actually easy to set up, just as easy as any other networking interface in some cases? The interesting thing about WireGuard, and I did allude to it, is that it is in kernel. So it came with Linux kernel 4.19. Don't quote me on that. Might have been 4.18 or 5.0. And it has only been in the kernel for that short of time. On our devices, we're using kernels as old as 3.4 or 3.10. So we would have to backport all of the support for WireGuard to that kernel, or find a user space implementation that we could use to implement WireGuard. The good news is that once that's finished, there should be support for it in things like Network Manager, which the Network Manager maintainers are actually working with us to upgrade to the newest version of Network Manager, which should hopefully fix some problems, bring in support for things like that. So as soon as those things come together, making an interface for WireGuard and actually making it available shouldn't be as hard as it sounds. It should be a little bit easier than expected. Support for it is not currently planned or on a roadmap somewhere, but it is an interesting feature, and of course, pull requests are always welcome. And his next question was, do you know of the Godot game engine? How hard do you think it would be to support Ubuntu Touch? Or support it on Ubuntu Touch, rather. The Godot engine is an open source game engine that I have attempted to use and failed miserably at before, to put it lightly. We met up with them at, visited their booth at FOSDEM, and we went to one of the talks given by one of their maintainers. It was super awesome. Those guys are great. I haven't looked into their support of other operating systems terribly in depth, but it seems like adding templates for export of Godot games is actually pretty simple in the engine. So we do have support for EGL in Ubuntu Touch. So being able to export a binary that can run on an EGL system, or call EGL, and the bigger problem would be getting it to talk to Mir correctly. Should also be possible. How hard would it be? I can't give you a good estimation on that, but I think it would be a great addition. Someone just said, sounds like we're waiting for Godot. Am I right? Yes. Yes, we are waiting for Godot. Ari88 had a couple of questions for us, and Ari is a member who created the Infinite C image for Ubuntu Touch, which we want to be the default wallpaper, but currently I need to fix a couple of bugs, and I haven't gotten on that to actually allow it to be the default wallpaper in Ubuntu Touch. Partially related to its size. I asked for a 4K image, I got a 4K image, and 4K images don't work. Good work, me. That's my fault. His first question was a legal question, for which the hosts of this show are not lawyers and cannot answer appropriately, and are not qualified to give legal advice. So we will continue to try and get you an answer to that question, but I don't want to answer it live for risk of lawyering. But a second question I can answer. What do you think about the Spurv project from the Collabora team? Now, I looked into this a little bit, and Spurv is a really unfortunate name for a project, but also a tool that you can use to create or to run Android apps on your Linux Wayland system. Wayland specifically because it connects Surface Flinger directly to Wayland and shows Android windows as normal Wayland surfaces, which is pretty cool. Looking a little bit more into it, it looks like Spurv uses the systemd nspawn tool to spin up the containers in Linux. So that's going to be a big blocker for us. We're currently using the upstart init system rather than systemd, so we can't currently use systemd nspawn to create containers. Also, working with Anbox gives us a little bit more of a confined environment that we can give to apps. And I'm not sure how Spurv would work together with the binder in kernel messaging system that is already running for our Android container on Ubuntu Touch devices. Whereas with Anbox, we know that we can embed a second binder into the kernel, giving the kernel two binders, and allow Android apps to run that way. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to support that technology specifically. I don't believe it would be better than the Anbox project we're already using, but I'm glad to see that there is becoming more interest in running Android applications on Linux systems, so that's becoming more of a possibility, and hopefully we can integrate more changes in the future. Matthew had a question. Are you guys in discussion with Pine64 about the PineTab? specifically, because we've heard about the Pine phone and the Pine book, and we've also heard about the PineTab, but there hasn't been much movement from UBports on the PineTab specifically. So the PineTab is another project that, of course, we know about. Pine64 is a very public-facing company. They do talk a lot about what they're doing. I saw the PineTab over at FOSDEM, at least one of the early prototypes, and it's a pretty cool device. It's got a Surface-style detachable keyboard. It's got a kickstand case that you can use to prop it up. It's a 10.1-inch tablet, and it's going to feature the all-winner A64 along with 2 gigabytes of RAM, just like their developer kits and the Pinebook, and the Pine phone, as it were. And yes, we know about it, and we are discussing with them. The project was on hold a little bit for just a while TL was trying to find an appropriate touchscreen for it. That was kind of what was holding up the project at the time. I believe he was talking with his manufacturing partners over the week to get that solved, testing out some different touch screens that could be used for the tablet. And that should be just about wrapping up now, so that project should be coming back. I believe... Hello, Lukash. I know you're watching. We'll be getting a couple of PineTab kits that we can use, but it'll be very similar hardware to both the Pine book and the Pine phone, so supporting it won't be as hard as, say, porting to a new Android device once we are actually on the Pine phone. His second corollary question was, is there not also a worry that the rather low specs for the PineTab might make it a less than ideal showcase for Ubuntu Touch? Again, it'll have the same hardware as the Pine phone and the Pine book, so we'll be seeing similar performance across the board, and those see similar performance to the BQE 4.5, which is still a very good... I knew Lukash was watching. Which will all have very similar performance to the BQE 4.5, a little bit faster. So we'll be looking at that kind of speed. The big interesting part about all of these projects, though, isn't necessarily their performance, it's their price. The Pine phone, the PineTab, the Pine book is currently available for $100 plus shipping and handling. The Pine phone is expected to be at $150 plus shipping and handling. And the PineTab will be unannounced yet, $120-ish plus shipping and handling, including the keyboard case and everything. Don't quote me on that. So all of these projects will give developers the hardware that they need to develop Ubuntu Touch and other mobile operating systems for cheap. And this is something that we are sorely missing from the open source community. Is currently for us, it's easy to get cheap hardware. I mean, the Nexus 5, at least in the US, can be had for well under $100. If you're lucky, $50 or less. But for that, you have to go on the used market. You might need to replace the battery, things like that. The real power of the Pine phone and PineTab projects is that they will put this hardware in developers' hands and prospective users and people who just want to try it out without getting too deep into the investment. And that's really the power of Pine64 and our partnership with them. So, rock on, guys. You're awesome. Lukash, you're also awesome. Good work. So I'm not really concerned about the low specs for the PineTab or the Pine phone in any way. Let's take some questions from live chat. First comes from, I'm sorry, I can't read Cyrillic. Will there be another video about porting Ubuntu Touch to a device? Now, the last video that we came out with was, a month or two ago already. Maybe even longer. Time is flying lately. And it's a video about porting Ubuntu Touch. It is, not good. It's okay, but the microphone volume is quiet. It was our first time streaming with OBS. We were porting to the Fairphone 2, and we stopped at a rather good stopping point and wanted to continue the project. And we haven't done that yet. But the German community and Austrian community, don't forget to separate the two, are looking to create more videos and blog posts about porting devices so that you can have resources like that. And they are coordinating in the porting section of the UBports forum at forums.ubports.com if you want to check that project out and maybe offer your own help. Another question came in from Golden. Can I use Ubuntu Touch on a OnePlus 5 since there's support for the OnePlus 1? Unfortunately, no. So because of the way that ARM has been, or the ARM platform has kind of come up from the embedded system days, there is not an easy way to run one operating system, one image on a bunch of different devices. Some of that is further complicated by the fact that Android has a lot of proprietary drivers and software in it, which means that it is not easy for us to give life to a device, as it were. That's something that the Halium project is working to make easier for us to work across different devices with the same image and unify the efforts to port. And basically, because of the way that the whole ecosystem around Android and ARM has come up, a custom image must be made for basically every handset, and sometimes different models of the same headset, like for some Motorola devices. Don't get me started. Short answer is no. Longer answer is it's a little more complicated. All right. So, Fuse Team asks, is there any progress on making Ubuntu Touch Halium compatible? So in the journey to make Ubuntu Touch and Halium work together, there has been some more progress. Especially Notkit and Friedel are working a lot to make patches and software fixes, all sorts of new projects in some cases, to make us compatible with Halium 7.1, which is based on Android 7.1. That work is ongoing. There are now devices that have video, Wi-Fi, audio, not for calls though, LTE, all working. So that progress is continuing, and we should be seeing ports coming down the pipe. All right. Well, I think I'm gonna head out here. So thank you everyone for watching the Ubuntu Touch Q&A number 50. We are playing a little bit with the format. We'll continue doing this over the next few episodes, see what we can change, make better, because it's been about 2 years since we started doing this, and the format needs a bit of a change, a bit of a shakeup, as it were, I feel. Big thank you to everyone who came out today, asked questions, gave us news, and before I go, I know Lionel's watching and transcripting this, as it were, taking notes. So I want to thank him, because if you've been on the UBports blog, checked out the notes for these episodes, you'll find them all nicely written out, accurate, and usable for, in some cases, sending to other news organizations, apparently. I'd like to thank Lionel so much for that, because he is working really hard. That takes a lot of work to listen to us talk about Ubuntu Touch, write it all down, while also discussing with some other people on what's going on. It's nuts. He's awesome. Now, this episode of the show might be over, but the fun keeps on rolling. You can find us on all sorts of social networks, including Facebook, Twitter, PixelFed, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Instagram, and you can get our news on Telegram, Diaspora, or Matrix as well. Or, if you want to get a little bit more involved, you can chat with us on Matrix, on the forum, or on Telegram. Links to all of those can be found down in the video description. Leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Uh, Leave a comment if you have suggestions on how I can be better at hosting it. Or if you have more questions for next time, I'll be sure to include them in the show doc. Thank you again for watching today. We'll see you next time, hopefully with with less fired Q&A hosts and more discussion about Ubuntu Touch and all of our related projects. Bye-bye.